So what would you say are the implications of the tar sands project on indigenous peoples in poverty, and those included on reservations?
Well, the tar sands itself is in a Canadian reserve, and it affects the biodiversity and really the environment, potentially the state of Florida in terms of landmass. So that's what markets do. They place value on things that really have no value, like the tar sand. So you have these indigenous communities living in Canada who have what are called Aboriginal rights. That is the right to hunt, to fish, and to use their ancestral lands. Even though they're limited in the reserve to a particular area, they have broader Aboriginal rights. And that contributes to their well-being. That contributes to their daily life, that contributes to their culture. I mean, there's a real connection between biodiversity and culture. Biodiversity and biological diversity and cultural diversity. Indigenous peoples all over the world live in a relationship to the earth. They live in a relationship to their environment. They live in balance with that environment. They care for that environment because it sustains them. They think they believe it to be safe. That relationship is sacred. There's a great many different ecological systems throughout the world that are inhabited by indigenous peoples where that
rights are in place.
Yes, where the biodiversity is very much a part of their well-being. So when the tar sands come in, they start measuring the value in terms of oil. How much is the oil worth? And obviously, when you look at that model, the billions of dollars that tar sands oils has the potential to generate compared to the income of the indigenous people who live there is the disparities are quite great, but not, it's the, when you talk about sustainable development, the world has taken a look at, focused on the word development and not the word sustainable. What we're trying to do and what we're trying to do now is to focus on sustainable. What is sustainable? And the tar sands is unsustainable. Tar sands oil, any kind of mineral extraction like that, that destructive, is by definition unsustainable. They cannot sustain it. It's too destructive. But they look at it in terms of dollars and not in terms of sustainability, not in terms of well-being, not in terms of what is really life and the relationship to the earth and the life-sustaining capacities of the earth. So what it does is, and the short answer to your question is, it creates more poverty. Tar sands particularly creates poverty, and not just poverty in terms of a particular community, but a poverty of biodiversity, a poverty of the life-sustaining capacities of the earth. And that relationship that indigenous peoples have had, that indigenous peoples are trying to teach the world about sustainability, is really not considered when they use an econometric model that only measures dollars. It doesn't measure the value of the forests that are being sustained, being reduced, is not taken into account. All of those costs are externalized. They're not. What I mean by that is that when they go into mine tar sands, if they had to deduct from that the costs of restoration, the costs of the biodiversity that they're really losing, the medical costs, the people that get sick from that environment, the loss of the water table, if they internalized those costs and deducted it from the profit that they're making from the oil, it would be profitless. But so what they're doing is they're making their money on the ruination of indigenous cultures and indigenous ways of life, and at the expense of very sacred biodiversity that will probably not be able to be restored.
We are in pain. Look at them, surprised at our anger. Look at us. We are struggling to survive. Look at them, expecting sorrow be benign. Look at us.